I remember like seeing you play Stockholm Syndrome at MSG, and I was just like, I broke 3 nails. Like it was like there's a lot going on.
Don't be
I
breaking
blacked
nails.
out
Oh,
for a
look,
second.
you've got long nails.
I blacked out for a second. Hi, my name is Larisha Paul. I'm a staff writer at Rolling Stone, and it is my honor to introduce Niall Horan to the Rolling Stone interview.
Thank you.
Thank for being here.
Thank you for having me.
How are you feeling today?
I'm good. Sunny California. It's beautiful. Welcome to California, by the way.
Thank you very much.
You were just saying you'd never been before.
No, and I feel like this is like a great reason to be here. You did a pop-up yesterday.
Yeah.
Coffee shop.
It was nuts. We did a little collab with a coffee shop on Melrose, and they were doing some free coffees for the fans and stuff like that.
Yeah, I saw some fans saying that you look like you'd be an awful barista because of like the way you were holding one of the coffee cups.
They were really, is that what they said? As I hold that awfully. No, I don't know. They didn't ask me to make anything. I was just handing them out. Why? What were people saying?
They were like the way that like you were signing something, and I think your like finger was like in the cup or something, and they were just like, "That's not sanitary."
Oh, really? Oh God, yeah. Now that you say that, it's pretty bad.
Yeah. How do you find it splitting your time between London and LA?
Yeah, I'm doing more and more London these last couple of years for sure. I love it here. I mean, like, it's been so cold and miserable back in London for the last couple of months. So to come out here and get some sort of a colour, I don't know if you'd call it that, any sort of colour, but yeah, get some sort of anything but ghostly white. It's nice to be here, and like I like that I have the ability to go back and forth, because yeah, London can get a lot, and so can this place. So it's nice to go between.
Yeah, and obviously we have a record coming, Dinner Party.
Yeah.
Number 4, which is really exciting, and also comes at a time when I feel like there's a level of progression that you expect to have in your career at certain milestones and at certain points, but you're coming into this off of a massive album that had a massive tour. And so you're coming back into this in like a very settled space. When you listen to the record, it feels very homey. It feels very settled.
Yeah, definitely settled for sure. I think off the back of the show and the tour with the show, it was just, I needed that kind of thing to happen to settle me down. It's only in hindsight I realised that, because I just love being in the studio and just going out on the road and doing all the bits that come with the job. But I didn't realise how much confidence I would gain from that tour and that album.
I want to talk a little bit, obviously the title song, first single, Dinner Party, we know the story a bit by now. Like obviously this is a record that kind of sets the stage for changing a lot for you.
Yeah.
In a good way. But where were you kind of at before that you kind of recognized such a big shift?
I don't, very, very single and very just kind of, the way I would look at it is a lot of my life, well, all of my life and most of my existence is based around my job. Those gaps that I would have in between jobs were just being at home doing nothing, chilling out, just getting and counting down the days until I go back out on the road and do it all again. You know, it's only now that I think that way. At the time, we were just kind of just going along with it. It was in my mid-20s, just having a good time, touring, making music, doing all the things that come with it. Yeah, I was just free-spirited, kind of just flying around, and then not particularly looking for anything or anyone or anything like that, and then just however the world works, yeah, the opposite happened.
Whose dinner party was it?
Was that mine?
Oh, it was your dinner party.
Yeah. It wasn't much of a dinner party now, to be honest. It was kind of probably more Uber Eatsy than it was me over a stove. Yeah, just like a few people were over having food, and that was pretty much it, really, yeah.
There's this line of, I'm done looking for somebody, but you weren't actively looking for somebody. So.
Yeah, well, you always have it in your head, don't you? Like, you'd like the idea of settling down and doing the whole thing, but you're also kind of doing a bit of both. You're not thinking about it, and you are thinking about it. It's never a switch that's completely turned off. So I guess you're in the waiting room. You know what I mean? Hoping that the doctor walks in.
This is obviously now the second album in a row that is so kind of rooted in love and romance in this way, and this really kind of lover boy era, which is so fun. But I'm curious about kind of how that feels for you as a writer in contrast to writing about heartbreak.
It's very different to stuff to write about. But I also find that if you're going through it, you find anything easy to write about. Like if I have to go into the studio and make something up, then it's harder. Sometimes I do write like observational type music where I look at other people's scenarios or other people's relationships or things I might have seen on the street, on the train, I don't know. But when it comes to like love or heartbreak, I find them, if you're going through them, you can write about them a lot easier. Yeah, these last two albums have definitely been more on the romantic side, obviously, because that's where I'm at.
But I think it's interesting too, because you do still manage to find a level of kind of grit and conflict even in that. Like, you're writing these songs, you're happy, you're in love, it's great, but then there's also this kind of seeds of maybe not doubt, but just kind of this awareness of something could go wrong. There's a potential for that. It almost feels like, not that that's a reality, but that it's almost like a bad dream that you kind of wake up from at the end of these songs.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. There's, in the songs, I mean, if it was all rosy, it wouldn't be a great listen. It's the way I would describe that. Like, all of my favorite songs have a bit of doubt to them. If there's no doubt, you're kind of lying to yourself. You know, you have to, when I'm trying to put pen to paper, there has to be a bit of both in there for me. Some songs can be completely up-tempo and happy and fun and, you know, look, this is great, what a life. And then other songs can be the complete opposite, and sometimes you find like a middle ground. I always try and have, like, even in the doubtful songs, kind of have a bit of an uplift in them, a bit of a happier ending. I've always kind of done that. When I did What a Time with Julia.
What a time, what a time, what a time. You cling to my body like you wanted it forever. What a time, what a time, what a time for you and I.
I remember listening to that song for the first time, and the whole thing was, what a time, what a time, what a time. And at the very end, she went, what a lie, what a lie, what a lie. And I was just like, that's where it's at. So I try and do a little bit of that. Like you pick up little songwriting tips from people that you write with, and that was a big one for me, because I like the flipping a song on its head and making it something different. So I do that quite a bit. Like in Better Man on this album, I did it in that. And yeah, there's a bit of bad dream and a bit of doubt and a bit of songwriting tips and tricks, you know.
What makes a great pop record for you?
Catchiness, for sure. I think what I try to do sometimes is just write loads of parts, like different. Like, this is not the chorus, where we're just going to write a part, see what comes up. Same way, and then just see if I can jigsaw them together, because it's all about hookiness and trying to get as many, in my eyes, trying to get as many catchy bits into a song as you possibly can. And I think the great pop records of all time have got great hooks in them, whether that be musical or melody thing that repeats or whatever. But that's why I've got so many choruses in Dinner Party, because I felt like it was the best part of the song.
Yeah, I also think we're seeing bridges come back a little bit. Like, that's exciting. Pop has been really missing a bridge for a while.
No, 100%. I you know, like I've spoken about her a few times, but I feel like Olivia Rodrigo has been a big influence on that for pop writers. I think she had a lot of red light stars. Like, she does that a lot. What I like about Olivia's music is you feel like you're getting one song and then you get a completely different song. It completely just flips on its head musically, goes somewhere different, brings you to a bridge, brings you to some weird musical breakdown thing. So whatever her and Dan Nigro are up to is a good little team they've got going there, and yeah, it's definitely influencing people for sure, including myself.
Yeah, and we have a lot of the rock moments on this record. Obviously, I think everything's toes a line between pop and rock, and we also have some country stuff in here, and we'll get to that. But I think the rock stuff in particular, even like listening to Taste So Good, like the first couple seconds of that reminded me a lot of like my favorite Blink-182 song, and I was just like, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, well, Blink, obviously, like that drum sound is something that we were trying to chase, and that comes from that like late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s kind of punk rock era. Yeah, the rock's obviously a big influence in my life. Just since I was a child, I write pop songs, but dressing them up in a different way sometimes is quite cool. And I also have completely, now, the way my career is going and the things I'm doing, I'm completely thinking about live shows all the time. You know, all I think about is that tour. Like, because as I've been saying recently, like I learned so much from being on the road and being out there every night to the fans. Like, there's only so much sitting on Spotify you can do, and reading comments in places and things like that before you actually get an idea of what people actually think, and then you can see it in the room. You know, these are the people who put their hands in their pockets to come and watch you on a Friday night in Pennsylvania. Like, you get to see what they actually think of your music, and I just find that the rockier stuff really goes off at the shows, and the fans also really love that when I bring the show down to its very smallest and make the arena feel as small as it possibly can. So, and I also like that. So works for us all. We all win.
Yeah, and it was like that tour in particular around the show being this kind of homecoming in a lot of ways after having like that opportunity to do these tours taken away. Obviously, Heartbreak Weather arrived at the worst possible time that it could have possibly arrived.
I'm still getting over that.
And like I think a lot of fans, I think more in that. I mean, it was going to be you and Louis Capaldi on the road, and it was like such a massive moment for the two of you, and you know, and then just kind of having to watch that slowly fade away.
Oh, that was terrible. Yeah, the album came out and we were meant to tour, and then obviously COVID happened, so that didn't happen. I'm kind of glad it didn't, because we would have just drank for 6 weeks. Because that tour was missed, and I hadn't toured since 2018. Yeah, Flickr was 2018, so there was a long gap of like 5 or 6 years between the tours. I think the fans were just ready to go, waiting in the wings, you know, more than ever. I just was like, even having those conversations with my agents and stuff like that about booking tours, and they were talking about arenas, and I was just like, "Are you sure? Like, are you really sure about this?" Because I don't want it to be embarrassing. And it was just the craziest year ever. Just was not expecting it. We played to like 1.5 million people or something nuts like that around the world. So yeah, the fans, as I said, were definitely waiting in the wings for me to come back. Yeah,
I remember on the Flickr tour seeing you play at an amphitheater in Jersey and feeling like that show felt so special, and especially because of the nature of the songs, it made so much sense in that space. And then for the first time seeing you back after that to be headlining MSG, that's a crazy switch up.
Oh, it's nuts. Like being able to say that I played Madison Square Garden, driving down and just seeing your face on the side of Madison Square Garden is just pretty crazy. Like if I never did it again, that was a box ticked. And like I love the amphitheaters, you know, they're some of my favorite venues. That's because it's so different to anywhere else in the world. I love playing the amphitheaters, but to get the chances to play Madison Square Garden, I'm never turning down, and to play it twice was even more crazy.
Yeah, I still have there was like these little postcards they had at the show that was printed with a tweet from a fan who was so sure that you were going to get to that room and that you were going to sell it out. Not even just one night, you did 2 nights. Yeah. And to have that, and it's like, was it New York for Lovers on one side, and then the actual tweet. I'm curious because this is becoming a recurring thing where you're referencing things that your fans are tweeting, or like there's just kind of this ongoing lurking screenshotting, bookmarking going on.
What did the actual tweet say from her? Like, oh, you should play MSG, and I was like, what if I could, or something like that along those lines. And then all of a sudden, then that was manifested apparently. A couple of years ago, a fan named Megan tweeted me saying, "Niall, sell out MSG and I'll be in the front row." Well, tonight is the first of 2 sold out shows here at the Garden, and I just found out that Megan's here somewhere, but she doesn't have front row seats.
No, this isn't real.
So yeah, no, I'm not a serial scroller, but I do come across things every now and then, yeah.
And that also kind of leads into Flowers a bit, which I believe is that was the kind of starting point.
Yeah, there was a comment that, I don't even know what it was under. Maybe it was an Instagram or something like that. I'm not sure. I can't remember what the post was that I posted. Well, I just remember seeing it, just, you know, you're going, it's like, "Niall, follow me. Niall, I love you. I hate you. Your eyes could grow flowers." And that's all the tweet said. And I was like, that's interesting. And I was sat next to Amy Allen, and we were in Austin, Texas, in between the 2 weekends of Austin City Limits. And we were just sat on the couch, just like thinking about what we were going to do next, and having, you know, I think we might play a game of pick-a-ball, and came back in and we were looking at the phone. That comment came up and I was just like, yeah, that's so interesting as a concept, that like me and Amy were chatting about it. It's like, this person is just so powerful in the small things that they do, in their personality, and the way they make people feel. They're so powerful that their eyes could grow flowers, and it kind of like obviously doesn't make sense, but it makes your ears perk up. And I just love the idea of it. And then also, obviously it came from a tweet, so it's even cooler.
I remember around the show reading about how like Meltdown was inspired by like something Tom Hanks like randomly said in an interview. And so I'm curious about kind of how you're sourcing these kind of things. Are you storing these things places, or what is it that is consistent about what jumps out to you that you're like, I gotta remember that?
I don't know. I just like, maybe it's something that I'm like thinking of that at that very moment or something, and then I see something or hear something. I heard Tom Hanks in an interview saying that this too shall pass, And it's like, I've heard that phrase before, but, like, I just wrote it down as he was saying it. I don't know what he was on. He was on one of the late nights, or he's doing a podcast or something, and I just wrote it down, and I just thought that's such a good, like, talking about, like, anxiety and, like, just calming yourself down, just like this too shall pass, or the flowers thing. I don't know, maybe I was just thinking about, my girlfriend at the time or something, and then that popped up and just added to it. I don't know, maybe whatever, I don't know what it is that's making me write these things down, but I just hear there's something sometimes, when you're just like maybe subconsciously listening to something, or watching an interview but not really listening to the whole thing, and you hear something that just pokes out, and that's just how I write notes anyway. Like, something will pop into my head and I'll just write it down, or someone will say something and I'll overhear something and I'll just write it down. I don't know what it is that makes you do that, but I'm sure I'm not the only songwriter that does that. I'm sure it's a pretty common theme. Like, I know you hear Taylor talking about it, like she'll watch movies and take from books or poetry that she's read, or I heard Dermot Kennedy in an interview talking about an old book that he'd read that he written a song about. So yeah, it happens for us all, I guess. Yeah,
I talked to Dermot recently for a story, and I always think it's so interesting to hear how Irish musicians in particular kind of have this, and it kind of goes into what you're just mentioning about even like anxiety being a thread across the show, and there's like a separate thread across Dinner Party about loss, the potential for loss, and it just kind of exists in this space, but I think it's handled in such a way that's not, it doesn't panic. It's very like accepting of reality.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know if it's an Irish thing, but we're definitely, like, we all have it. It just depends on how you deal with it. We all have it on some scale, and it's just the way, it depends on what way you deal with it. You can catastrophize it and make it everything, or you can just break it down into smaller little parts and compartmentalize. That's the word. See that big word? Learn that one.
Yeah, but I think it's nice because I think it's also like when you look across your records, you kind of do see this through line, and you do see this growth in your songwriting as you kind of came into your own. And I really noticed it listening to Pretty, because I was like, this is the rockier, grown-up version of Mirrors from Flickr in a lot of ways. But I'm really curious about how we go from You're Beautiful, Have You Ever Been Told to this.
Yeah. I don't know. I literally had, I could probably pull it out on my phone. I just said, You're So Fucking Pretty, because I'd obviously said that to my girlfriend or something, and had that in my head, just like, when you don't think you are, but you are. Like, I just thought, there's no other way. So I could have been, you are so. At one point, I was like, we were talking about going, you are so pretty, or something weird like that. I was like, no, you just say the thing. And obviously, sometimes swearing on records can come across as contrived. So I tried and dance around that a little bit. But I just say, you're so fucking pretty. Like, can you not see it? I don't know where the juxtaposition between Mirrors and Pretty come. I don't know. It feels lighter. Mirrors was a heavy concept in the first place. Like, I've spoken about this before. I was like in a coffee shop outside the embassy in London, waiting to get a visa appointment, and there was a girl just sat in the corner, and she was just bawling her eyes out, and I was just thinking about, like, I always think about this, like, we don't know who we're walking past on the street. We don't know what is going through people's heads. The Pretty concept is kind of a little bit different, and it's just a bit like, it feels lighter. If it's said lighter, but means kind of the same thing, I guess, Yeah, I was going through a bit of an indie rock phase in the middle of the album, and that's where Pretty came from.
You listen to a lot of music, and I think you can tell that you're a listener. I think there's always kind of like a tell in music when someone is very insular and is very like, I don't want to hear anything else, and I want to block everything else out so nothing seeps in. But you're like kind of the exact opposite of that. You're like very absorbent.
Oh yeah, like it's the same with anything. Like my first ever singer-songwriter I heard was Paul Simon, which gave me Damien Rice, which gave us all of these afterwards, or the first rock band I heard was the Eagles, and then gave me Bruce and gave me Fleetwood. Like, you're constantly just picking up new stuff. I mean, it's nearly impossible not to these days, with like being around people and listening to what they're listening to, or just, I don't know, going on Spotify or Apple and just like going through the different playlists on a Friday and just like hearing what's coming about, and you can't help but pick up different influences, whether they're conscious or subconscious. Yeah, there's some great music out there now for all different types of genres, like really cool acoustic stuff. The indie thing is big right now, and that's really cool, and the country stuff is something that I've never shied away from, or I've always loved. So yeah, you're always constantly being newly influenced, if you know what I mean.
What's your dinner party playlist when you're hosting? What are you playing in the house? What sets the tone?
I feel like you always have this concept of like, oh, it's going to be chilled, and then it ends up everyone hammered. But that would usually start with like, I don't know, like an early Billy Joel album, or Oh by Damien Rice. which turns into Fleetwood Mac, kind of chill-ish. Before you know it, you're listening to anything. To be honest, I'll listen to most types of music. I don't really, maybe daily I don't, but after a few drinks, you know what makes you get up and dance.
It reminds me a lot of just the kind of premise of a little more time and like wanting to be in that home space for a little bit longer. Tell me a bit about that record.
By the way, what's your favorite song
On the album? Oh, End of an Era.
End of an Era.
That it made my chest tight. And I think when a song moves you like that, like it's just, and I think there's like a lot attached to it. And I think that record in particular felt really reminiscent of like the Take Me Home era. I thought a lot about those nights, like being on One Direction Twitter with everyone, and the albums would always leak before they actually came out, and then you guys would come online and we would pretend we hadn't heard anything, and obviously you could tell that we had.
We didn't hear anything.
I don't know, where'd these lyrics come from? We made that up. Oh, what a coincidence. But it reminded me so much of how much fun the Take Me Home era felt, because I think Up All Night was already out, I think, when you guys were like really broke, and so Take Me Home was the first kind of album release era that everyone got to experience together. And everyone seemed like they were having so much fun. And I think it became a little questionable with each album of like, is everyone still having as much fun? But that one was kind of undeniable.
Yeah. No. I wanted to ask you that question to see where you ended up. I can see why you like that song. I love it. It's clearly like deep and about something very serious, but it still has a kind of, there's a bit of a drive and a bit of dirt to it, which I also like. Going back to A Little More Time, I love how it makes me feel. Like I get that, like I still get that rush from like the second we wrote it. I wrote it in Nashville with Steph Jones and Rocky Block. Just made me feel really good, and the lyrics one of those ones that happen really fast, because it's something that I think about all the time. Because there are periods, like last year for instance, I was going back and forth between LA and London like I think I averaged every 12 days or something like that. So there was periods where I literally didn't unpack the suitcase. I would just leave it in the hallway and pick out of it. I'm not even joking. And I would just pick out of it and wash stuff and put it back in and pick out of it again. And then before I knew it, I was taken off again for another. And I was just like, got to the point where it was annoying me. Usually I'm all right with it. I've traveled enough. I've got enough British Airways points. But I just got to a period where I was just like, oh, no, I just want to stay here now, like, and be at home. And it was just reminiscent of that moment, and it was a very easy song to write. But it also gives me this kind of like 90s nostalgia, 90s rock, kind of like Goo Goo Dolls kind of. I don't know what exactly the reference is, but it gives me that kind of open strum, very 90s rock feel. It's probably is my favorite song on the album, to be honest. Just off the, like, I get that with Black and White, for instance. Every time I play Black and White now, it feels like the first time I've played it, and I can feel the energy off the crowd with it too. So I think that, obviously, apart from End of an Era, I do think A Little More Time would be a fan favorite. I could be wrong. You tell me.
You know, I think the thing that's interesting about it, because you're creating these songs, you're thinking in the headspace of how is this going to translate live, but then the song itself is about not going away.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And so now you're kind of creating these songs that are going to be taken on the road. And I'm curious, kind of, obviously, like you miss a lot of home when you're not there, but is there something that you really miss about the opposite, about being away when you are back home? I
do love touring. Touring feels very separate to me. If I'm going and I'm doing like, I'm going away for a few weeks to write or something, you get to a period in the writing where you're just like, oh right, we've run ourselves into a corner here. The last 10 songs we've written are crap. Let's park the bus here and just, and go home. So that stuff is a bit annoying, and like, maybe less so these days, but promo trips used to be taxing back in the day. Like there was a lot of travel. So there's less of that now, but touring is just a completely, like, I see that in my head completely different to anything else that we do. Like we're going on the road now. We pack the suitcase and we don't really come back. And we had a great thing, myself and my girlfriend, like we had it down to a T. I felt last time, where I didn't spend that much time away. But I just see touring as a completely separate thing, and I just get so excited about it. I feel like the older I've gotten as well, the more I see every show as an individual show. Like it would definitely, when you get on the road, you can, I don't want to say they nearly all become the same thing, but it's just like, right, a show. Whereas I feel like I'm seeing them all as, and I think the fan culture is doing that. They're making each individual show an event now, more so than ever. Like it used to be kind of the tour. Now it's like each individual show has its own, tailgate or its own, I don't know, whatever thing that the fans in that city have set up. Like it kind of feels a lot bigger each individual show now.
I remember on the tour, on the most recent tour, seeing you play in Dublin as well. And I thought that was
Oh, you went to
interesting.
Dublin?
He did go to Dublin. We were there for my friend's birthday. And we were like, well, we might as well. We're here. And I remember thinking it was going to be like a proper like arena. And we got there. I was like, this is a giant, this is the festival grounds. I was like, this is kind of crazy. And it was standing, and you brought Ed out to do little things. That was nuts. I think that yourself and artists like Ed and Lewis and even Noah Kahan, like there's like a real thread of normalcy in the way that your careers are presented. Like you come out, you do the big shows, and then you get to retreat. And I'm curious what that moment was when you kind of realized that was an option for you, because in the beginning it might have seemed like it would not have been.
I think you have to retreat. I think like there's only so much of yourself that you can give, like just from a, you know, for your body, for your brain, for everything. I think it's amazing to be able to go and do the shows, but it's good for you. I think the older you get, the more that you realize like you do need to have a bit of both, a bit of balance. You can't just be like constantly at it, which is how I don't understand how Ed does it. He is a machine. You know, it's amazing, and I just know in my head, right, we go out and we do those. Usually was 9 or 10 months of touring, and like I just know that's my time, and we'll chill after that. The older you get, and the more you get your head around your schedule and your time and your personal time, you can start to get a bit of that yin and yang and have a bit of balance in your life, because it's so important. Like if Noah Kahan doesn't disappear for the last 2 years, you don't get the Great Divide, or you know, or Porchlight, or I've heard the rest of the record. It's crazy good, but you don't have time to think about what's coming next if you're just constantly just at it. And it gives you time to live life, to write these songs too. I know every artist says that, and it is a cliche. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. Like you can't just be making stuff up. You need to go and live your life and come back to it. And I think the most nerve-wracking thing about stepping away is like hoping that are they going to be there? Like who's going to be the next big artist that they might have moved on to? I don't know. Like you start like doing the rounds in your head. Thankfully, that's what I was most blown away by, was how I've seen the loyalty over the years, but seeing it in front of my own eyes in 24 was the wildest experience, just to know that I haven't toured in 6 years or 5 years, and they're coming out here at these festivals in 23 and filling those arenas, and just like knowing that loyalty and feeling that comfort from the fans does make the stepping away a little bit easier, I think, especially this last sort of 18 months or so. Like I was like, right, they really liked it the last time. Just give me some time. But also, this is probably the quickest that I've had a turnaround. Like people say that I haven't released music in 3 years, but it doesn't feel like that. Well, I haven't released music in 3 years, but it doesn't feel like that to me. Like when you finish an album, you start promoting it, you go on tour, all of a sudden that's the end of 24. You start making an album in 25, you hand it in, the label put the plan together, and here we are, and like we're going on tour again. It's like it all happens a lot quicker in our world than it probably does if you're a fan of music and waiting for the next big, you know what it's like, when are they bringing out the next series of this, or when's this artist bringing out the next album? So it never feels like that long for us, but I'm sure it does for the fans.
Yeah, I think there's also an element of it where it's like you do have to go away, you do have to have that space, and then what's happening in the meantime is people are sitting with the music for longer.
Yeah.
And then your relationship with the music changes. And I think even in the time since the show, like I think there's just an element of reflection, and I thought this a lot about End of an Era as well, and I was curious about your perspective on kind of how grief and loss almost like changes the way that you hear music. Obviously, you can hear a song, you can love a song, but then you can experience something, and now you listen back and it's completely different. Like I think Made in the AM is a really hard album to listen to now. The entire album is like saying goodbye and farewell, and it's kind of the whole premise. And I remember that coming out, and I was one of the few fans that thought that was like, okay, you know, they're like serious, they'll be back, and like, and then the years went on, and I was like, okay, maybe everyone else was like, maybe everyone else was a little bit right. But it's a hard record to listen to now in hindsight.
It's funny because it's one of my favorites.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, has your relationship with those songs changed? Even like Walking in the Wind feels like a very, after Liam passed, like that was like a really, for the fans at least, grueling experience to hear that record. And so I'm just curious about kind of how your perception of these songs that you even made together, these records that you're making on your own, how does grief kind of impact and change that?
Do you know what? I haven't even thought about that, but I'm glad you brought it up, because it's going to make me go and listen to them now. I never really thought about it in that from that perspective, but I can see exactly why. Actually, some great songs in that album. First of all, we were also sad that we never toured it as well. Like that was the album that never got toured. It's now going to make me go back and listen to those songs from that side of the aisle and review them from that perspective. That's a pretty wild thing you've just brought up. I never even would have even thought about that. What other songs are on that?
I think Infinity is a big one.
Infinity, of course.
That one's I'm like, and I never got to see.
Well,
One Direction
Infinity
live,
was
but, like,
one
I
of the
think about
first
that
ones
one.
that I remember, because I remember seeing the first photos after Liam passed of us, and there was a picture of an Infinity, the wall from the music video thing. And I remember seeing that photo, so that song was the first one that came into my mind. So I was thinking about that. But now you've brought up a different. I'm going to have to go and have a listen to that album, and I'll message you and get back to it, honestly, because I genuinely haven't. When you were asking that question, I was just like, oh my God, I've never even thought of that. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And I think History is also one where it's just like,
Yeah, of course.
it's sweet.
Yeah,
It's sweet.
History
But
and
it's also like you
Infinity
look
were-
back and you're like, well, hold on.
Yeah, obviously the obvious ones that stand out for that reason, but the deeper ones, the Walking in the Winds and things like that, I've never thought about it like that. Yeah, because we have different views of them from when you made them. So yeah, I'll have to get back to you on that one.
And you also, I mean, obviously, John Ryan and Julie Bennett have worked so much on
Yeah.
that record, and you guys have continued to have like a really strong partnership, and they've been able to watch you grow. What was that experience like of going in and working on End of an Era together?
Yeah, that was nuts. We wrote End of an Era about 4 times. It was because originally this album, or this song, was kind of like a end of an era to me, meant like, all right, we're kind of moving on, looking forward to the future, looking back on the past with nostalgia, kind of like being happy with what you had, excited for what's going to happen, and didn't really like, that was kind of the crux of the concept. And then we'd written that song like a long time ago, and then it was like, no, we need to return to this. Like after Liam passed, obviously John and Julian lived next door to Liam for a long time, so they and we all grew up together, and so it was very for the three of us, it was actually quite a crazy experience to I don't want to say have to write that song, because we were always gonna, but yeah, it is a crazy experience to have to write a song like that, because you don't ever expect to want to or have to. So it was very strange. Like, but I remember like myself and John stepping outside at the studio and just like writing these lyrics for 20 minutes, because we were like, we have to write a song about this. And End of an Era just felt like the right vibe for it, like the original concept. So we just ripped it back, started again, and still had the chorus. Just a very weird experience for us all, but something that we all felt like we had to do for ourselves, for anyone who's lost anyone, for the fans, for anyone that knew Liam. It felt like the right thing to do and something that we wanted to do. Just terrible that we had to.
I love how celebratory it feels, though. It's
Yeah.
it's not a devastating song. And I think when fans first heard about it, they were like, I had to buckle up, like this is gonna be. And I was expecting that on first listen, and I was like, by the end of it, you're happy. You're kind of light and lifted.
Yeah, because like at the end of the day, all of my memories are happy. You know what I mean? Like all of our, we were talking about it when we were writing it, and all of our memories are of traveling the world and messing around and having fun and being teenagers, and like I don't have negative memories, so I have to hold on to them too. So it felt like liberating or something to write about. And I think that comes across in the song. Just all the lyrics are like, the first verse is quite sad and stuff like that, but then it's like, remember all the good times we had, that kind of stuff. So having both of that in the song, and I just love how it kind of starts off as one type of song and then it turns into a different type of song. Yeah, which is also great. It also reminds me some of the 1D stuff. Kind of had a bit of both of that in it.
Yeah, it put me very much in the mind of Take Me Home, and just how fun those songs felt. Those songs are so much fun. One of the phrasing I use, but like it felt like the One Direction fandom has kind of been frozen in time. Everyone has the same friends. We're all going to the shows with the same people. And so I'm curious just kind of what you're kind of envisioning for the tour of as far as being back with all of these people and kind of having this reunion. I mean, I remember like seeing you play Stockholm Syndrome at MSG, and I was just like, I broke 3 nails. Like it was a lot going on.
Don't be
Like, I
breaking
blacked
nails.
out
Oh,
for
look,
a second.
you've got long nails.
I blacked out for a second.
No, I can't. I honestly can't wait. Like, it's the best part about what we do. It's also the thing that I've done the most of, for the last 15 years. And like, I just love the feeling of getting out there in the evenings. Like, you could be having the most boring day ever, just sat backstage doing nothing, and then like I always used to think when I was growing up, I wonder what goes on backstage. Like, we just standing in the arena going, I wonder what they're doing right now. Nothing much. I'm not gonna lie. It's our office for the day. Like, we just kind of chill out, not do much. Into the amphitheaters, we play a lot of sports backstage and do a lot of messing around. But there's not a lot goes on. But come 7:30, 8 o'clock, and you start getting ready, and like I kind of treat it as like going on a night out, and I say it every night, and I'll never stop saying it. But like, what's even more apparent to me these days is like every single person in that place has got like an individual story as to how they started listening to the music, the friends they've made, as we've been talking about, like how they got there that night, where they got the money to buy the ticket, what they had to do to get that money in some cases, parents who bring kids to shows and things like that. That stuff has been blowing my mind more now than it ever did. At a point, playing to thousands of people was normal for me in a weird way. I'm delving in more to that in my head now. And I just get excited now about the prospect of putting on the biggest possible show I can. And I've already basically made the set list, and we're 6 months out from it even starting. I have it all in my head. I know exactly what the stage looks like. And just giving people value for their money is kind of what I'm trying to do the most of. And the community, as you know, because we were at the start of community-based fandoms, it feels stronger than ever, which is a cool thing for the artist on the other end, that you would write songs and people would attach themselves so deeply to it that they do all of these things for you. It's pretty cool, and they're doing it for themselves too, like, which is as important. Like, they're doing it, they're filling up these places for me and coming to the shows, but they're also, like, you just told me that basically all of your friends are people that from our music and stuff like that, and it's just it's a great meeting point too. Like, the community around concerts in our sphere has always been hugely strong, but it feels bigger than ever now.
I also think it's interesting because I think you've been able to establish an audience outside of that to a certain extent in a way that is
Crazy.
kind of tangible, and that shows. Obviously, the first record, you start with the Flickr sessions, and then we go into that tour and it's amphitheaters, and then we come back and we get to the bigger kind of rooms, but there's also a kind of separate thing going on. It's your audience from The Voice, it's your audience from the holdover from the artists that you've worked with, that you've collaborated with, and it's kind of just expanding in that sense. And so you're also just kind of bringing all of these other people into this pre-existing world.
It's actually nuts. I noticed that, especially in America on the last tour, like the crowd being a lot different. Literally, like, people wearing like Voice t-shirts and Team Niall t-shirts and stuff like that. It's amazing though. Like, you look up onto those lawns at the amphitheaters and people who got like last minute tickets and just bowled in. I like that. Just people come and just have a few drinks and listen to music and then stick around and come to the next show and just, I noticed a big growth after the festivals, because obviously when you play the festivals, not everyone that stood in that crowd and is there to watch you. Like, I've stood in many a crowd and become a fan of someone I'd never even heard of. So I think I gained a lot from that, thankfully. And then The Voice, and as you say, some of the artists that I've collabed with. Everyone's welcome. Please come along. Let's grow this thing. It's been pretty cool to just watch it all evolve over the last 3 or 4 years. It's mind blowing to me every day.
And you work with a company called Venue, right? And that's making shows more accessible to fans and putting more, like, why is that something that is important to you being in this space? Because it is so driven by the live space, but the live space is kind of becoming increasingly inaccessible to a lot of people.
Well, first of all, I love amphitheaters. I think you're so lucky in America that the weather's good enough for you to do it, because they're the best setup. Like, the stage is there, the crowd is there. They mainly look the same every night, but they're huge. Like, I don't think people realize how big these things are. They're like, some of them are like 25,000 people, and the atmosphere in them is just different. It feels more raw and edgy. Yeah, and they're just a little bit out of town sometimes. But yeah, it's so important. Like that, I've always tried to make the shows as accessible as I possibly can for people to come to. And I think, yeah, just it kind of needs to happen a little bit more. The way the world is working and turning, live music is just, it's always been such an important part of my life. And like, I went to my first concert when I was 4. I've been to so many gigs, and yeah, the fact that it's becoming more difficult for people to get to shows is very sad. I'm watching, like, I don't know if it's happening in this country as much, but in the UK we're seeing a lot of like smaller venues like shutting down because the funding's not there to keep them up, and I'm sure it's happening here. It can't just be a UK centric thing, but yeah, we just need to try and all help each other out a bit.
Yeah. What has it been like putting this set list together? 4 records is a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
You got to leave a lot of stuff on the cutting room floor unless this is going to be a 3-hour
I
Eras tour level.
I know. 4 albums is fun to work with though. But I've found it really, really fun because now it's funny how like songs that you wrote on the first album match up to songs on this album in a weird way. And they could go next to each other in a set list. Track listing is very different to set listing. And I like to take people on a bit of an up and down roller coaster throughout the gig. Obviously come out with a bang, but it is funny now seeing how certain songs fit together that you didn't think would. I'm doing my 2 stadium shows with Thomas Rhett in the summer, which is going to be amazing. He's a good friend of mine, and he asked me did I want to do these shows with him, which is just so cool to just even say that we're playing a stadium. Putting a set list together for that would be obviously a bit shorter than my own one, but then having that in mind, and I've got like BBC Radio 1 big weekend in the UK, and that needs a certain length set list, and you're always just like seeing what you can squeeze in. But the tour set list is very exciting because I think from the second I left the last tour, I knew what the next stage would look like. Like I knew what we did well, what we didn't do well. Yeah, so I'm very excited to put the whole show together, how we're going to start the show, where the acoustic set fits in. That's my favorite part, is actually, and I had some good ideas for how the show would look. So yeah, if I was a fan, I'd be very excited.
Okay, that's a nice tease.
Yeah.
I remember when you did the feature with Thomas Rhett, he basically said that he was surprised that you even wanted anything to do with that song. But
I love it.
I think there's a bit of country and there's a bit of Nashville in all of the records, and you've worked on the record, like each record in Nashville at some point.
Yeah.
What was so surprising about that?
Well, Julian is married to Thomas's manager, so that's how I've known Thomas for forever, and we become good friends. And then I just have a natural love for country music. I think Irish folk music and country music they're married, so it's in us a little bit more maybe than it is in the UK or whatever. I don't know. I just have always just appreciated the storytelling. I get it. I understand it. And Thomas just had this song, and I was sat in the studio. I'd done the first week with John and Julian for the album, and I was waiting for my car to go to the airport, and I had my suitcase, and I was just sat in the back of the studio. And Julian was working on a couple of songs. He was working on this Thomas Rhett song with Blake Shelton on it, and he was working on, I don't know what the song is called, but it's a Teddy Swim song. It's like, God went crazy when he babied you. And he was working on these 2 songs, and I was like, whoa, Julian's on fire here. These are bangers. And I just fell in love with this Thomas Rhett song. Like, I could not get it out of my head. And I would just, I was like, you need to release this. This is just a banger. It just has everything I love about country song in it. And then he released it with Blake, which I was upset by. Joking. I love Blake. And then he just messaged me saying, like, you love it so much, we have to release it. I was like, yeah, damn right we do. So I just recorded it one day and we released it. But I just you know when you just can't get a song out of your head, and I was pestering him. I was like, I put my house on this to be in a big song. I just love it. Yeah, it literally came as naturally as that. He just knew I loved the song from day dot, even at points maybe when he wasn't as into it as I was. I was trying to convince him that this song was a
don't worry.
And if you don't want it, I'll have it. So I'm excited for doing those shows with him to football stadium and Hershey Park. We played in 2013. I just remember a strong smell of chocolate and Harry doing laps on the stairs, running up and down. I was just going behind him on the Segway. So they're my memories of that stadium. But I am looking forward to doing those shows. I think it's a cool bringing together of the two worlds, and obviously Thomas is very country, but he's also quite poppy too. So it's a good blend.
I think Boys Are Fun sounds like it should be on that set. It feels like it makes sense for that space and that audience. And
yeah, no, Boys Are Fun is such a fun song. It's funny, like people always say that. Does the music like reflect where you wrote it? Like, and I always find it does. Like, Gets It From Her Mother is a Nashville song. End of an Era was written in Nashville too, actually. But then other songs like Boys Are Fun or Taste So Good were written in central London, in Soho, looking out on the madness that goes on around there. We'd had a few beers and then we wrote Boys Are Fun. It was a really good, it's kind of got a yacht rock feel to it. It's just a real feel good tune and a fun title. Yeah, I think the fans are going to like that too.
I want to ask about what is driving you musically now. We're 4 albums in. I think there's such a difference between Flicker and Heartbreak Weather, and then a jump between Heartbreak Weather and the show, and then this record, Dinner Party, feels like a natural continuation of the show in a lot of ways, and an evolution musically. I'm curious about what's this driving force when you think to the next 5, 10, 15 years. I obviously want to still be on the road and want to have more records to play on the road. But what's lighting that fire for you right now as an artist?
Musically, I just love the evolution. I don't think that I'll scare anyone away with this album. No, not anyway. I don't think it's musically going, what's he doing? And I like that. I like the slow evolution that we get to go on together. I think it's pretty cool, and that makes me excited for what's the music going to sound like in 8 years' time, you know. But I do think that the crux of rock and, you know, finger-picked acoustic guitar are always going to be there. That's not changing. And I also just, as we mentioned, like the touring stuff, like really gets me out of bed, and like playing live shows and making songs for live events is something that excites me too. I'm just loving it more and more year on year, what I do. And just, I think every artist says it, but like, you know, we're just forever grateful for like the loyalty of the fans, and that, you know, feeling that urge off them to want to go to shows. And like when I announced the tour and when I announced the album, and you can feel it in the air. I think that's exciting in itself. But yeah, I love making records. I love touring. And I'm excited for what the evolution sounds like in, as you say, 10, 15 years.
Have you had the experience of getting to see the fans at any of the other boys shows and like kind of being able to have that experience with them? Obviously, you're all going to be on the road this year, which is kind of crazy and breaking a lot of banks.
I'm sorry.
Breaking a lot of banks. They're like, as a matter of fact,
me.
just all go do it together. It's a festival. Let's go back to old times. Just put them all at once.
Yeah, I went to Harry's show a couple of years ago, and that was just wild. Madness going on there. And it kind of it reminded me of the 1D stadium shows where it was just seas of people jumping up and down and watching the things going on the floor, all the fans like dancing around and stuff. I love that stuff. Yeah, and it was cool just to watch, like, you feel a sense of pride watching the boys doing their thing and what they love to do, and the communities that they're able to create. Yeah, hopefully I'm going to try and get to a Louis show of some capacity in the next few weeks. But yeah, it's crazy just watching the fans and watching how they've grown up but still have that like youthful energy and what they bring to shows, and hearing that roar when each of them come out onto the stage. It's like, yeah, I understand that scream. You know, I get it. Sounds like a rocket's about to take off. And yeah, no, it's just like you get very much a sense of pride of watching them do their thing, and watching the fans wrap their arms around them as well. As I said, the loyalty is just, there's not a group of fans like it. So, and whether that's people that go to all the gigs or people that go to the individual lads gigs or whatever it is, there is nothing. And you know, when artists say that, you go, yeah, good one.
But it's true.
It is very true. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true to not many artists, and I think it is with us. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Very happy with it. Thanks.
Now, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
on
you.
the Rolling Stone interview.
That was amazing. What an interview, seriously. Incredible.